we set the stage with a little bit of advertising shenanigans, but I'm actually hoping that we can clarify some of this information, maybe dispel some of that misinformation that exists. And Darren, I'd like you to kick us off with that. What is Wi-Fi 6?
Well, you know what, Cameron, I see a new internet ad coming on at Taboola or something. 10 things you need to know about Wi-Fi 6. Number 7 will shock you. I think that'll work. So Wi-Fi 6, what is it? What isn't it? Well, basically 11AC, 802.11ac really showed us how fast Wi-Fi can go. And it really did deliver lots of speed. Wi-Fi 6 does deliver more speed. I've seen test results up to 39%, 30 to 39% faster. So it is faster. But the number one thing with Wi-Fi 6 is efficiency. Basically use that speed to get more devices talking at the same time, so we make better use of all of the spectrum available. So, one of the best illustrations of that is about a month ago, my son and I went hiking up in the Rockies, and I bought a new hat, to go hiking with. And so, a week before we left, I got a box, and it was a big box for just a little hat that I was going to wear hiking. So very inefficient way to ship that hat to me. And we've been doing, that's how Wi-Fi has been for 20 years. We've been shipping hats in boxes for 20 years. And so with Wi-Fi 6, we can now use different size boxes. And so that's the best way to describe it. Cambium likes this technology because we're building better access networks inside buildings, and we're using this technology, the 802.11ax standard from your email chain there. We're using 802.11ax for building better fixed wireless outdoor networks. So we love this technology. It's very adaptable. That was pretty quick.
Yeah. So no, I'm just.
And if he had hair like I do, he wouldn't have to buy a hat, right?
That's exactly it. You got it.
Okay, listen, I'll tell you a quick story and I'll get back to business. 2 years ago, right around now, actually, my wife and I were getting ready to go for a walk. Beautiful sunny day outside. And I get out and I sunscreen my face because I want to look great forever, right? And as we're walking out, my wife stops. She goes, "Baby, don't forget your bald spot." Thanks. Yes. First time in my life I'd had that one. Thanks, baby. I did not burn. All right, so building on that, it sounds like there's a lot of into the Wi-Fi 6 that's worth getting excited about. I like the whole smaller hat or smaller box, bigger box kind of thing. Klaus, you're the kind of the independent analyst, I guess. What do you think? What do you think people listening to this right now or later on should be excited about with this new tech?
There's a huge amount of new technology going on in Wi-Fi 6, right? By the way, I should just start by saying it's true, of course, that the Wi-Fi Alliance, who creates these denominations, these names, right, Wi-Fi 6 and so forth, also made it possible to call something Wi-Fi 5, except I don't think we'll ever see a product being marketed as Wi-Fi 5, because why would you do that? But I mean, technically it's the AC version, the so-called the 802.11ac. So yeah, so 1 to 5, I don't think you're ever going to see, well, I mean, some of them practically don't exist anymore, I guess, but certainly 5 even you're not going to see, right? So we're really going on Wi-Fi 6 and moving on to 7 and so on, right? Eventually. So what's the big deal about Wi-Fi 6? Yeah, so there's a lot going on in the standard, and I think you have to think of it as a standard that will evolve, and we will unfold the many opportunities there are in Wi-Fi 6 over the next number of years. It certainly is faster, but it's very much about giving people a much better experience than they've ever had before. And I think that's going to be something fairly obvious once we get into a high density, for example, a high density situation where there's a lot of users, and you've got your Wi-Fi 6 phones, for example, you've got your Wi-Fi 6 network. You will notice that all the problems that you used to have in getting your share of bandwidth, for example, those issues will go away. So the classic case for Wi-Fi 6 is, and one of the cases it was designed for was something like a stadium, right? Or a very highly dense school environment where there's a lot of PCs and there's a lot of devices of all kinds, right? So what we've had before is that once you start piling on the devices and more devices, phones or whatever, PCs or whatever, or IoT devices for that matter, connected lamps or anything, When you pile them in and they start getting connected to the same access point, for example, then the issue is that the performance will start dropping really fast on the previous version of Wi-Fi standard. Now, because of the new technology, including OFDMA and so forth, that I'm sure Darren is going to tell us a lot more about in a moment, then these issues are going to be much less pronounced. In fact, to such a degree that I believe that some of the non-consumer applications are going to be, for example, industrial applications, are going to be really big for this standard. And that's one of the parts that I'm, as a business person and as a Wi-Fi industry person, really looking forward to. Because I like to divide it up into two parts. There's all this stuff that we know that Wi-Fi can do. It will do better, right? Much, much better. And then there's all kinds of new use cases that we haven't even really explored, where Wi-Fi 6 will be able to do things that we've never been able to do before with this technology. So there's those two pieces, and both are exciting, both are great.
You know, Klaus, if I could just, add on to a little bit of your comments there about the industrial. I was talking to one of our customers recently who works in the oil and gas industry in Texas. And, up in Canada, Cameron, you guys have the same thing there. And so what he was looking at actually was using augmented reality to improve their maintenance of the transmission lines and the oil lines. And he actually was telling me that he went on a tour of some light industrial facilities in San Diego and some different places to see how augmented reality is actually being used in light industry, light manufacturing, to be very dynamic in manufacturing. And so if you think about AR, augmented reality, great, wonderful, neat technology, healthcare, telehealth, but guess what? The doctors of tomorrow and the oil pipeline workers of tomorrow, they're going to school today, and so that's where it has to start, right? That's where we're going to see these new technologies, and you're going to need the low latency. So Wi-Fi 6 delivers really low latency. That's part of the efficiency, and it delivers more bit rate to more devices. That's capacity. So lower latency, higher capacity. And we're going to see that coming into education first.
Darren, just real quick, we have a couple of questions, and one of them is actually, I think, a really good one. Can we have a quick, just the layman definition of Wi-Fi 6? What is it?
So Wi-Fi 6 is the certification program. It's the interoperability certification program of the Wi-Fi Alliance. So it's a standard that says that vendor A and vendor B, or this mobile phone, will work with this access point, even though from different vendors. And so it's interoperability standard, but it's based upon the IEEE standard. So the IEEE standard is 802.11ax. Wi-Fi 6 is the certification standard based upon. Wi-Fi 6 is the certification standard. So Wi-Fi 6 is not the entire 802.11ax. What they do is they take a section of it, and they have these bake-offs, and they have vendors get together, and we all contribute information and say what we think is going to be important. Then they create this certification standard and certification program.
Jonathan,
so Wi-Fi 6, I want to clarify one thing, that this is a confusing point here. Wi-Fi 6 works on the 2.4 gigahertz frequency. We've been using 2.4 gig for 20 years. And it works on the 5 gigahertz frequency. We've been using that for 17 years, 18 years. It does not, Wi-Fi 6 is not the new upcoming 6 gigahertz frequency. That's going to be a new certification standard. That's going to be called Wi-Fi 6E. E is an extended.
Shame on you for being confused about that. Jonathan, is there anything you want to add to that?
I'm pretty good. Heck, I just learned a little bit, but I know one of the questions was what's the strategy for 6E and that transition. So Darren kind of hit into that, and understanding that the chipsets that come in today don't have that 6E capability. So whatever you're buying from 6 to 6E is not going to just automatically happen from a hardware standpoint.
Yeah, and so Jonathan, just to follow up on that a little bit more too, people often ask, well, should I wait? Should I wait? And here's something to bear in mind. I know we have this in our discussion plan to talk about things, but really look at the applications and devices you have today. And every device you have today, I have 20 devices in my home. They all support 5 gigahertz, all of them. So the devices you have already support the frequencies. And 5 gigahertz has got 500 megahertz of total bandwidth available. So it depends on different regulatory regions. You can use different slices of that 500 megahertz, but it's got a lot of bandwidth that's really underutilized. So now bring in Wi-Fi 6 and this new protocol, this new way of accessing that frequency, a new way of leveraging all that frequency and spectrum. It's got some nice tools that's going to make that 500 megahertz even more useful. So lots and lots of value right now.
We have a quick question here, and then let's proceed. I think we're going to speak to this actually in more depth later on. But what's the impact and performance of multiple Wi-Fi hotspots in relation to Wi-Fi 6?
Multiple, like as in overlapping hotspots? I guess that's probably the question. If they're overlapping each other, yeah, Wi-Fi 6 addresses that and allows greater frequency reuse. Another term there is spectrum reuse or frequency reuse. So it does address that. And so what it does is it actually takes the, so remember in Wi-Fi networks, there's this thing called a BSS. It says, basic service set. But you know what that really is? It's really the MAC address of the access point you're connected to. That's what it really is. So that's a number, right? The MAC address is a number. So with Wi-Fi 6, it takes that number, that MAC address, and it encodes it. It encodes it into the RF preamble. It's called BSS coloring. BSS color, nice fancy marketing term, BSS coloring. What it really is it's the identifier for the access point that you need to be talking to. So the hotspot that you're connected to, it's every RF frame is tagged with an ID. So what that allows is, that allows any other device to be able to read that ID without looking at the entire packet. It does not have to look at the entire wireless frame to know that this packet belongs to somebody else. So now it can ignore it. It can ignore those packets that don't belong to it. And so that allows what's called frequency reuse, devices to overlap using the same frequency. That's a new technique coming with Wi-Fi 6. So it allows higher density for those hotspots that may be overlapping.